My life is falling apart, and it's all thanks to my husband. We had a perfect life. Both of us worked in the jobs we loved. We have a beautiful daughter and a healthy son. When I was pregnant with our son, we both almost died due to complications. So before the birth and even afterwards, I didn't want to have intimacy. Why would I? I almost died and my body was in pain for months afterwards, even with strong medication. I thought my husband understood because he never pushed me for intimacy or even asked. I thought it was because he understood my pain, but apparently he was just getting it from somewhere else. A few months ago, we were visited by Child Protective Services. I was terrified at first, frantically thinking of what we did wrong with our children to cause a visit. But no, as it turns out, some woman I've never met before died in a car accident, leaving behind a daughter, and my husband's name was on the girl's birth certificate, and he was named in the woman's will as the father. I thought it was a mistake at first, until my husband told me the truth. As it turns out, while I was suffering my pregnancy and the after effects of almost dying, my husband would go to a woman he knew at work and get it off with her. He said this as if he did me a favor. Well, as the CPS worker explained to us, my husband is her closest living relative that can care for her. The woman's family apparently wanted nothing to do with the poor little girl. When she asked us if we wanted to take her in, I said yes. Yes, I know this might be the true cause of all my issues, but my husband pawned that poor girl off to live with her single mother for 5 years. He doesn't get to pawn her away when she needs help. She's his responsibility and now is ours. I told him I'll help take care of the necessary visits for wellness checks and help with whatever CPS wants us to do. All he had to do was explain everything to our children. The fact I'm saying this tells you what he did. Yes, nothing. We had to clean out a room and buy new furniture and even looked for some toys. Our children go to a private school, so I picked up some more work hours in order to be able to afford her tuition. I was the one who had to tell our extended families the big change because he didn't want to do so. I did almost all the heavy lifting. So color me shocked when his daughter finally joins our family 2 weeks ago, and the first words out of our children's mouths was, "Who's that?" Yes, I was the one who had to tell our children's school, extended families, family doctors, and my workplace about my husband's affair and subsequent addition to our family. But he couldn't tell our children, being he was too ashamed to face them. So guess who was the one who had to explain that they have a sister now, as I'm trying to settle the poor girl into her new home and room. And shocker, our children didn't take the news well as it was happening right in front of them. My daughter was screaming while crying, causing my son and the little girl to cry. A situation that could have been avoided if my husband just did the one thing I asked of him and explained everything to them much sooner. It's been 2 weeks of her living with us, and the situation hasn't improved. My husband has not picked up the slack that comes with having a new addition to the family, so we're struggling right now to make ends meet. I feel embarrassed bringing all 3 children around for appointments and groceries because the little girl is very much obviously not mine, and I can tell people are judging our family. My daughter is much moodier and less happy and refuses to even acknowledge our newest addition to the family. Our son doesn't really understand what is going on, and it's causing even him to lash out. And I don't even know how to help the poor little girl because I know that if I feel like my life is falling apart, she must feel even worse. I suggested family therapy, therapy for our children, even just marriage therapy, so we can hopefully move past this and work together as a unit for all the children. He's refused everything, saying that he knows he'll be lectured by everyone when all he was doing was trying to help me. I just don't know how to fix this. Please help me. I don't want to divorce him because I just know that will make it worse for the kids. But that's the only option my family is telling me. Meanwhile, his family is begging me to make this work and to just look past it. Thank you. I hear you all loud and clear. We'll be looking into therapy for me and the children and hopefully a good divorce lawyer. But first, I need to get some answers because some of you are raising some good points. Now for a few comments. When asked if she was sure her husband wasn't cheating now, the The original poster said, "I know this is pathetic to say, but I really did think he was amazing before all of this. When I gave birth to our daughter, he stepped up to the plate by caring for her and doing housework. He was an attentive father to both of our children. Before all of this, I was able to tell him I need to take a break, and he would just step to it and care for them and make sure I could relax. I don't know why he committed such an affair and then try to excuse himself. And I don't know why he's decided to not care about our children as much as he used to be. I guess I just keep hoping if we all go to therapy and find the root of the issue, we can fix it and go back to how our relationship used to be." Now, reading all these comments that are sounding just like my family, I guess I was just being naive. When told to leave her husband and that the child is not her responsibility, she replied, "I have to disagree with this comment. As much as I hate my husband's actions, I do not hate her enough to just abandon her in such a terrible time for her. I agreed to take her into our home, so she is indeed my responsibility as much as my husband's. And I didn't say this at first because I didn't know if it was important, but she and my son have gotten really close in such a short amount of time, I would feel heartbroken separating the two. So yes, it turns out husband didn't tell them, and then me the truth. A surprise to no one. I am figuring out. The story he told the kids was that youngest was a daughter of one of our friends, and we felt so bad we had to take her in. Nothing about her being their half-sister or him having a daughter with another woman. Well, when she came home that day and the kids asked who she was, the pictures we were able to share of youngest, she had braids in and wore much different clothing than when she arrived. It was my response to them that ruined his little lie. This is youngest's name, your half-sister, remember? Our son was too young to really get what it meant, but our daughter did. That's why she freaked out that day, not because of the new addition to the family, but because what the new addition meant. I apologized for causing her to freak out that day, for not sitting both her and her brother down for a real discussion over how they feel and to make sure their father did what he was supposed to do, and apologized for only talking to her now after she had a much-deserved reaction to it all. My daughter accepted the apology, and I asked her if that was why she was distant from the youngest. She told me that's part of it, and because word got out at her school about what the newest addition to our family going to the school meant, so now she's getting teased and picked on for having a father who cheated. It broke my heart realizing just how badly I messed up. By continuing to beg the spineless man they called a father to help them, and then allowing myself to get shut down, I was essentially allowing all the kids' needs to be ignored. I told daughter I'll sign her and her brother and sister up for therapy. Of course, the pathetic man tried to plead with me not to when I mentioned signing the kids up, but I told him to give it up already. All 3 children's lives have changed, and it will help them adjust with a professional to speak to. He's been grumbling and whining about it, but I don't care anymore. And this might cause many to be upset with me, but I'm in the process with husband to have him transfer custody of youngest to me. I've grown to care for her, and as some comments in my last post have pointed out, once I do divorce him and leave with our kids, I don't doubt he'll treat her awfully or neglect her. He's been right on board, and it took some convincing, but his parents finally agreed to be witnesses. I got all the paperwork set up and scheduled an appointment with an attorney to help with anything else. Once that happens, I'll try to get everything I need in order to have a smoother divorce and then subsequent move to be closer to my family. Thank you to everyone for giving me a good slap in the face and help me realize that the children and I deserve better. And I was being so gullible into thinking a man who cheats on his dying pregnant wife is deserving of any respect. Now for the update. I have 3 children, an 11-year-old daughter and 2 6-year-olds, a son and daughter. Just recently, after months of court hearings, home visits, background checks, and interviews with a judge and a social service worker, I've been granted custody of my 6-year-old daughter, with her biological father, my husband, giving up parental rights to me. Right now, I'm looking into how a divorce will go and what I need to get any affairs in order to make the process as smooth as possible for everyone involved. The reason for the divorce is because of how he behaved when his adultery came into light. As you can see from the ages, he cheated on me with a coworker of his while I was dealing with a highly complicated pregnancy and birth. I was the one who had to get everything in order. Meanwhile, it seemed like he did everything he could to make the process of a new addition to our family as difficult as possible. He lied to our children, refused to take all 3 children to therapy, and when I did take them, he whined and complained, refused to take on extra workload to help our budget stabilize after a new addition, refused to even acknowledge the children were struggling, and even refused to take all 3 children out and about because he didn't want people to judge, but it was perfectly fine for me to go through it. Basically, it felt like I was the only one trying to repair our family and have us move forward, while he made damn sure we were stuck and hurting because he refused to acknowledge that he messed up. Divorce is the only option for me at this point. I just want to know, how can I explain this to my children? I've seen how refusing to actually explain to children can hurt them. Hell, I was the one picking up the pieces from last time, thanks to him. I just don't want there to be any more lashing out or fighting. I'm terrified for my eldest in particular. She was the one most hurt by all these changes, and I know she'll understand why. The last thing I want is for her to blame her siblings or herself. I've yet to tell anyone else my plans for divorce because I don't want it getting back to him or the kids before I'm ready. And if there is no way to make the impact easier, how can it make sure it's less damaging for them? Now for a relevant comment. A commenter questioned parts of the story, more specifically why she stayed and helped take care of his affair child, and was confused on the custody of said affair child and the biological children. She responded, "Okay, let me try to help. I'm sorry for the confusion. I discovered her existence about a year ago because her biological mother died in a car accident. It's a little confusing here, and he still won't give me the why of this, but he was on her birth certificate as the father. So social services did the usual of home visits and background checks to place her with us because I refused to allow him to turn his back on her and have her struggle in the foster care system. I'm a nurse in the pediatric trauma center. I have been there as emotional support for children when they've been told about a parent's passing in accidents, or we had to make the tough call to CPS for abuse cases. I do not wish for anyone to witness when a child realizes that they're an orphan or being taken away from their parents. It's why I pushed for us to take her in. People on Reddit have told me that I'm too much of a saint for taking her in, and that's why they don't believe me. But if you ever had to rub the back of a 4-year-old having her first panic attack because she was told her parents didn't survive, I hope you understand why I refused to ignore a 5-year-old who this time I could save from the system. After the fallout that was primarily caused by my husband, and truth be told, I also have some blame for it as well, I decided to divorce him. I asked him to transfer her custody to me because I knew after the divorce there's a high chance they would keep her with him, and he wouldn't be a good father to her. I didn't want to risk the chance of that. I know that if I was the one to have custody of her, I won't have to worry about that in the divorce. And it's only the 6-year-old daughter he transferred custody over to. He still is a recognized father to our biological children. And thank you for the suggestion of age-appropriate dialogue for our children. I do have some training on that because of my work, so I could try to rework it to make sense for divorce, and probably bump up therapy for the children. Am I the idiot for staying married to my husband after finding out he's my half-brother? I've known my whole life that I'm donor conceived. I grew up in New South Wales, and my parents were always open about it, so it was never some big secret. I didn't think much about it beyond that, though, until a couple of years ago when my husband and I decided to take an ancestry DNA test. We thought it'd be fun. Maybe I'd find some half-siblings, and he'd learn a bit more about his side of the family. Well, we got the results, and I matched with him, my husband, as a half-sibling. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake, or maybe I misunderstood something. But no, After looking into it, we realized his dad was also a donor, and no one ever told him. Now, here we are, married for years with 2 kids, and we're still trying to figure out how to process the fact that we're siblings. I don't even know how to explain how I feel. It's just overwhelming. I love him, of course, but this changes so much. We've already spoken to a genetic counselor, and we're trying to move forward, but it's like everything we thought we knew about our family has been flipped upside down. I just feel kind of lost. Has anyone else here gone through something like this? I'd really appreciate hearing from anyone who has dealt with something similar, or even just your thoughts. Now for a few important comments. One commenter suggested family counseling, first between the couple, and then later for the children. They also mentioned taking leave from work to process this situation. The original poster replied, "I'm in therapy myself, but unfortunately my husband is not open to that right now. He's in a big denial phase and does not wish to talk about it." Another commenter expressed sympathy and recommended some media resources related to the fertility industry. The original poster responded, "I've actually seen most of that media and read a couple books from Australian DCP. I'm lucky to have been told early that I was donor conceived. It was never a huge factor in my life until now." Now for the update. Thank you so much for all of the responses, support, and advice. I've taken some time to process, and I wanted to provide an update on where we're at. First, I have been in individual therapy and working through everything. It's been incredibly helpful to have a space to just unravel my thoughts. My husband has also told me that he's open to couples therapy, which is a big step for us, and I'm hopeful it will help us navigate this together. To confirm some things, yes, my father-in-law is the donor, which makes him not only my husband's father, but also mine. It was a lot to take in. We're both really angry that my husband's dad never told him the truth, and at the moment, neither of us are talking to him. It's just too much. We've also discovered about 40 other siblings so far, all of whom live nearby. That was another layer of this experience we weren't prepared for. We haven't met them all yet, but knowing they're out there brings its own set of challenges and questions. As for our marriage, no, we're not divorcing. We love each other and are committed to working through this, but we haven't told our children yet. We plan to get professional advice before we do. This isn't something we want to rush into without understanding the best way to approach it for their sake. I know many of you are part of the donor-conceived community, and I just want to say that while I'm very aware and involved in spaces like We Are Donor Conceived, and I follow creators like Laura High, Donor Dylan, The Queer Mama, Rachel, Strangers Like Me, DC, Sunny, Evie Lucas, etc., I'm not interested in speaking to anyone publicly about our situation. I'm really proud of people like Victoria Hill for going public, but that's not what's best for my family right now. Thanks again for listening, for the advice, and for your understanding. We're taking this one day at a time. In the comments, a commenter expressed admiration for the couple's handling of the situation, stating, "So very impressed with you both. This must be such hard work, and my heart goes out to you. As a donor, this is my greatest fear. I was not anonymous by choice. Back in the day, the fertility clinics capitalized on our naivety. Am I the idiot for cutting off my sister and friends after overhearing their cruel comments about my relationship?" Here's the script based on the provided text. I have a situation where my sister and a group of friends, whom I consider my closest friends, talked about me behind my back. I overheard them saying that I'm not good enough for my boyfriend, who is an amazing guy, kind, funny, smart, and gorgeous. He's also asexual, which isn't a problem for me. We've worked it out, and he's open about it. We were supposed to hang out a week ago, but he got called into work, which didn't bother me much since I had a headache and went home. My sister and I share an apartment to save money, and we have a year-long lease, so I'm stuck for now. I was napping when I overheard my sister and friends talking about me. They were drinking and waiting to go to a club. I didn't get up because I was lazy and didn't want to put on pants. But then they started talking about me. They couldn't believe I was dating my boyfriend, said he was too good for me, and called me ugly. My sister even suggested that his asexuality was an excuse not to have intimacy with me. They made fun of my learning disability, called me the R word, mocked my financial stability, and made fun of my job. They laughed and talked badly about me. I was crying hard by then. They left, and I didn't know what to do. I've been avoiding them, answering messages coldly. I know I need to talk to them, even if it's to cut off contact, but I'm too ashamed and sad to open my mouth. My boyfriend is worried, but I can't get their words out of my head. I know it's not true, and my boyfriend is asexual, but I feel unworthy. My sister is my best friend. I told her how I feel too ugly and stupid to be with him. I showed her our messages and talked about his asexuality. I love her so much it hurts. I can't stand looking at her, knowing she said those things behind my back and that none of my friends defended me. I don't know what to do. I could break my lease, but it would be expensive, and I don't know how to explain why I'm doing it or how to face them. I don't know if I should tell my boyfriend. Now for the 10-day update. I showed my boyfriend the last post because I didn't know how to say it. He was sad and disappointed, but mostly angry for me. We decided a letter would be the best way to confront my sister, since I often write letters for different occasions. I wrote a simple and blunt letter, telling her I heard what they said, and that while I'm willing to work on our relationship, I need distance from her and the situation. I talked to my landlord, who was sweet and had no problem breaking the lease. She even had someone to take my place. I intended to pack and leave the letter on her bed, but she came home early and caught me. I told her I heard them saying I wasn't good enough and calling me names. She tried to deny it, then justify it, and finally started to apologize and cry. I thought we might save the relationship, but then she made herself the victim, saying things like, 1. I don't understand how hard it is to be pretty. 2. I don't understand how she feels because I'm used to not being the best. 3. It's not fair I have a gorgeous boyfriend while she's single. 4. She feels embarrassed when we go out together and has to tell people my boyfriend is mine, not hers. 5. She knows asexuality doesn't exist and says we're doing this for attention. I froze and couldn't say anything. She left to recover from our traumatic conversation. I packed the rest of my things and left the letter on her bed. I'm currently at my boyfriend's place, but looking for a room closer to my job. I also wrote and sent letters to my friends and blocked them on social media. I know they'll find a way to approach me since we work close, but I don't care. I had dinner with my parents and gave them an edited version of what happened. They said I shouldn't be angry because it was true and thought I was playing a prank when they first met my boyfriend. My dad said I was selfish for breaking the lease and betraying my sister's trust. I've been ignoring them since, as well as my sister. Overall, I'm fine, just more tired than angry or sad. Now for a few important comments. A deleted user commented, but their message is no longer available. This is a little bit off topic, but I'm curious as to how your relationship dynamic works with your boyfriend. I don't know too much about asexuality. You mentioned you have a disability, so if it isn't too personal for me to ask, how does your relationship work? How do you go about an intimacy life? I don't mean to be offensive or nosy, so apologies in advance. I'm just curious. Then OP replied, don't worry. Asexuality is a scale, like the hetero-gay. At one side you have the asexual, and on the other, the allosexual. Between you have different shades of gray. Some people don't feel intimacy attraction but don't really care about having intimacy if it makes their partners happy. Some really don't want to do it. Some only feel intimacy attraction for those they have an emotional connection. It's a very diverse community. As for the obstacles of dating an asexual man, I guess it mostly falls into what you consider a deal breaker. What are your needs, etc. I can live without intimacy. I can live happy without intimacy. Again, it's about compromise. There are other things in my relationship that are more important to me than intimacy, and they are being met, so I'm happy. I guess it just goes down to if you can't date someone without intimacy, that's okay. If you can, that's okay too. The only wrong thing is to start shitting rules. Now for another comment. When asked if her parents always treated her sister as the golden child, OP said, I checked it out some of the links people sent me, and I believe they did. Things like having to give her my clothes if she liked them, or having to eat her food if she didn't want any more. I don't know. I can see how some of the things they did were terrible, but saying they were hurtful sounds too extreme.